Stephen Parker says he's a man with a calling.
Good morning, Parent Patrol. You ready?
The 30-something-year-old security guard has lived in the shadow of the Robert Taylor homes for years and has witnessed the damage that drugs and gangs have brought to his State Street corridor neighborhood.
These are the students that didn't show up Friday, and we target them to make sure they come to school today.
Along with 80 other parents and community residents, Stephen walks the often dark and dangerous halls of one of Chicago's most notorious housing projects, all to make sure that children get to school safely.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Tuesday marks the first day that these paid volunteers, called parent attendance officers, will form a human school bus to protect neighborhood kids from gang violence. That very gang violence plummeted school attendance at Terrell Elementary School just weeks ago.
Because I have kids here. I love kids. I want them to be safe, and what a parent's supposed to do, a father's supposed to do. He's supposed to be out here in the forefront helping the kids.
Dad! Come on!
Like a shepherd, Stephen gathers the children like sheep, delivering them to a safe haven to learn.
That's it?
But his job's not over.
Okay, let's go back and get these other 3.
Stephen says the $8 an hour he'll earn doesn't mean much. It's his peace of mind that's important, doing something to make his community a safer place for the children.
And, you know, I believe in the Bible, I believe in the Lord, and the Lord sent me out here, and I'm going to be out here till He take me away.
Evelyn Holmes, CLTV News.
Lock this down like it's supposed to be. Lock this down like it's supposed to be.
It's like the Wonder Years. You blink and I appear from a cloud of smoke. I'm like a full court press and you choke when I'm near. Pull up a chair. Let me explain how I maintain the youthful glow. For you that don't know, it's called H2O. So stop asking when I walk by how I look so young and stay that fly. It's elementary. Kick the liquor when you turn dirty 30. The rest is a secret, so I keep it for the worthy. Some of us need to be doing the bid, spitting lyrics that's worse than riddling for kids. They say life ain't ready for nothing new, kid, so we kick the same stuff as if they were stupid. Take the same beat and loop it 50 times, why not? That other group did. It's idiotic, average and robotic. I keep it real. My mental thick like a Harley click. I got them singing Bob Marley hits. They don't wanna wait in vain, but I'm worth all the joy and the pain. Come hard when I hit, goddamn, you know the name right.
Lock this down like it's supposed to be. The pioneers, Wonder Years, LYTE. Oh yeah, she's back. The industry need that. Now pay attention to her. I told y'all to listen to her. Yeah, like she's back. The female G-rap been in the limelight. Baby girl, get your mind right.
Yeah, I'ma do it like this. Pass on the insight, teach a seed about life, and how I was the first female to smash the mic. Yeah, nigga, I speak the facts of life, while a whole lot of others was crap on the mic. Still showing MCs what cash look like. From the Jetta to the Porsche to the Navy, I'm tight. What I got, it's hot, you can have it too. Praise God, work hard, all you have to do. I was born to be the light, to give the spark in the dark, spread the truth to the youth, the ghetto Joan of Arc. It's sad, these kids put you at the head of your throne. All you give them back is raps about your bone. Getting head in your whip, studio in your home. Well, who cares, cause your dummies all sound like clones. It's the mystery to me how you got this far. Can't read, can't even count the miles on your car.
Lock this down like it's supposed to be. The pioneers, Wonder Years, LYTE. Oh yeah, she's back. The industry need that. Now pay attention to her. I told y'all to listen to her. Yeah, like she's back. The female G-rap been in the limelight. Baby girl, get your mind right.
Yeah, we take this easy, slow it up on them. I feel the animosity, loosen up the grip when I shoot from the lip, I hear it constantly. Yo, light, kick that same as you did in 86. I can't do that, I'm too evolved, too big to stay small in a world full of problems, especially the US just can't solve. My data too robust, they can't feel where I'm headed. How I keep the mind, spirit, and the body all connected. Respected by many and any that wanna test. Bring them Timbos and leave home that pretty mini dress. I'm a Viking, I'm fighting till the death of me. As God blows breath in me, I leave the legacy right as a rock.
Lock this down like it's supposed to be. The pioneers, Wonder Years, LYTE. Oh yeah, she's back. The industry need that. Now pay attention to her. I told y'all to listen to her. Yeah, like she's back. The female G-rap been in the limelight. Baby girl, get your mind right.
No, so I like the Batman better than the firecracker.
Kids in Piedmont Park were happy to see free ice cream being thrown their way.
I had 3 of them, and that was good.
Good because neighbors say some of these kids can't afford the treats.
Every time they saw children, they stopped and threw our boxes to them, like around there and around here.
But the ice cream bandits didn't get very far, just a few blocks.
A police officer tried to stop the truck here on Bowen Boulevard, but the truck jumped this curb and went down into Hansel B. Thomas Park and crashed. And that's where police say between 12 and 15 people ran from the truck.
And this is all that's left of the truck, a few ice cream bars still on the floor. The driver of the truck doesn't see any good in the act. He says he was beaten, threatened, and robbed.
If you call the police, I'm gonna kill you. If I find out you call, I'm gonna kill you.
He's so worried that he doesn't want his face shown.
They took the money that I had with me, my cash box, and my paycheck. And yesterday just happened to be payday.
The owner of the truck says he will be more cautious with his drivers and require them to finish work before dark. Karen Jarvis, ABC 45 News.
It was reminiscent of the bad old days of the 1980s. Cabrini-Green suddenly turned into a war zone as Chicago Housing Authority officers tried to catch several suspects in a reported drug sale. When officers caught one of the suspects, a crowd of people, including his relatives, objected. Somehow that confrontation escalated, and a 26-year-old woman who was carrying a child was shot, reportedly by an officer. The crowd grabbed an officer and beat him, and shots were fired from nearby buildings, and the officers were forced back, pinned down by the gunfire. A 16-year-old boy was shot by a stray bullet. Some tenants feel the police were at fault for provoking the confrontation.
We already have it hard enough over here, you know what I'm saying? And then they bring these CHAs over here, man. They've been on this garbage, man.
CHA officials have launched an internal investigation promising a thorough accounting for what happened. While they aren't ready to comment yet on the officers' actions, they deny that CHA police have a bad relationship with Cabrini tenants. Meanwhile, they are promising stepped-up patrols to keep the green quiet.
We are in the process of redeploying our personnel to have more police officers within the developments.
These problems come at a time when Cabrini-Green itself is changing. About a third of the high-rises that were once symbols of urban violence and despair are coming down, to be replaced by a new community, a mix of private and public housing. This morning, Mayor Daley called the melee an isolated incident that he says shouldn't reflect on the community itself.
But there's one incident. You can't say this is all the time. The crime has been down there. One incident doesn't reflect the whole community.
The hope here is that the mayor is right, that this is an isolated incident and not a sign of more trouble ahead. At CHA Police Headquarters, Mike Makowitz, CLTV News.
We are here to represent the entire, that they wanted to level the land, to lease it back.
They ain't got nowhere to go. How you gonna go somewhere?
1 o'clock today, it's 5 o'clock today. We will meet with the community and we will let you know what we will be doing, and we want you to get everything.
This is my house. This is my house right here. You take it. Going to my house.
I do not care to move my children in a 16-story high-rise from a 3-story walk-up. And it affects me. I'm devastated by it.
And we would urge the court and the Chicago Housing Authority and the tenants to sit down and negotiate an appropriate amount of time.
Public housing, meant to be a dream solution for the poor, has turned into a national nightmare, racked by drugs, crime, and violence. Yesterday, at a public housing anti-crime summit, the president signed an executive order to try to change that. The so-called one strike and you're out policy allows tenants and their guests who engage in criminal activity even once to be evicted, as well as screened from applying for housing in the first place. And today, officials start implementing it.
We'll send representatives of the federal agencies across the country to at least 20 major cities to take the things we learn at this conference and meet with public housing managers across America.
The regulation has been on the books for almost a decade, but those managers will now have clear guidelines on how to enforce it without violating people's civil rights. The housing secretary says it will make a world of difference for a lot of frustrated mothers he's met.
They'll be able to send their children out into the fresh air to play instead of living in mortal fear of the gangs and the drugs.
One tenant in a community where the policy is already in effect understands.
The policy made my neighborhood a safer and better place to live.
But others call it a sham.
This is the same kind of arrogant, top-down, parachuting in solutions from those outside and hoping that the people living there will participate.
Woodson thinks the policy won't be implemented because tenants are too indifferent, housing officials too lax, or other more lenient federal policies will get in the way. No one but the criminals wants crime in public housing. The question is whether this policy will make a difference or amount to an election year gimmick. I'm Mary Miller in Washington.
We'll send representatives of the federal agencies across the country to at least 20 major cities to take the things we learn at this conference and meet with
public. The Village public housing project on the city's north side is now surrounded by wrought iron fencing with special coded controlled access gates to keep out people who don't live here. Those who do live here are now required to carry photo ID cards. It's all part of Operation Safe Home, a collective effort by local and federal authorities and social services to crack down on crime in Houston public housing. 17 people were recently arrested on drug and weapons charges here.
Numbers are important in measuring the success of Operation Safe Home, but officials say they also want public housing residents to feel they can do something as simple as come out and sit on their front porch without feeling afraid.
And me being a single parent, I have a 3-year-old, so I can walk through here now and feel safer. I walked through here this morning, there's a lot of stuff that was normally here isn't here anymore.
But others say the effort is a failure. Bernadette Smith says vandals have broken gate security at the main entrance.
They done kicked that and made this here just not workable at all.
She also says she's seen some of those recently arrested drug dealers already back at work. The Houston Housing Authority says it has an aggressive policy for evicting residents who deal drugs, but many officials acknowledge most of the troublemakers are outsiders.
Dope dealers don't generally sell their dope in front of their own door.
We intended to do this project so that we could have an impact, that when we arrest people, the people in the community, these single parents, the people, the elderly people could see that these people would not be back in 5 minutes kicking on their doors and threatening them.
Off camera, some police officers who've patrolled public housing projects for years tell KNWS they think the housing authority should kick out more residents who help outside drug dealers. Officers say that in many cases the dealers are boyfriends, girlfriends, or family relatives of the residents. That effort could very well be stepped up as officials get ready to expand Operation Safe Home to other public housing projects. Felicia Griffin, KNWS TV 51, Houston's News Channel.
The lines between fact and fiction, real life and child's play, have become so blurry, the world's biggest toy store chain will stop selling realistic-looking toy guns. Toys R Us yielded to public outcry, which increased following the death of a 13-year-old boy. Police say Nicholas Hayward Jr. was killed last month when a housing cop mistook the boy's toy gun for a real one. After their son's death, Angela and Nicholas Hayward Sr. appealed to toy stores and toy manufacturers to get rid of the toy weapons.
I just ask that if you find some way to just stop selling the guns, and the children, especially the children, just the parents don't buy the guns for the children. I mean, it's a shame that it takes the loss of a 13-year-old boy, my son, in order for it to even get this kind of attention.
In the Gowanus housing project where the Haywards live, residents say they're pleased toy guns won't be so readily available.
You see the accident that happened the other day, and it could happen to someone else.
I think they should take those toy guns out of the stores because they are making them look too real.
and it's very dangerous for the young children.
Police Commissioner Bratton says he hopes the effort helps to de-glamorize guns and violence.
Unfortunately, the quality of some of these replicas or toy guns, if you will, looks so real that it's created problems not only for police in this city but around the country in terms of confronting children. We recently had a very tragic incident here.
Other large toy retailers taking part in the effort include Bradley's and KB Toys. Several smaller retailers are also getting rid of toy guns. With Halloween at the end of the month, toy gun sales usually go up in October. But the toy stores that are taking toy guns off their shelves say this can't be an issue of money. Nicholas Hayward Sr. says he's pleased with the decision, but it's only a step to making New York safer for children. In Brooklyn, Anika Pergament, New York 1.
If resistance to the federal court order ceases at once, the further presence of federal troops will be unnecessary, and the city of Little Rock will return to its normal habits of peace and order.
1957, a stormy year in Little Rock's history as the United States attempts to desegregate public schools. Vidor is making similar history as the national government works to integrate a public housing complex there.
The thing that strikes you in that similarity is that now this is nearly 50 years later since the time that segregation has been declared illegal in the United States, and still some element of force is necessary, at least in this instance, and we presume that probably there would be other places similar to Vidor.
There also are vast differences between Little Rock and Vidor. For example, the presence of national security is less obvious in Vidor, with black students riding a school bus closely followed by a U.S. Marshal in this unmarked car.
Okay, let's see something on the Eisenhower.
Dr. Carroll says another difference is that Vidor and U.S. officials support integration as a moral issue. In 1957, Carroll says President Eisenhower leaned more to the legal side.
He was not necessarily favoring integration, which even at that time was the law as interpreted by the Supreme Court, but he was simply upholding his oath of office to uphold the law. So that's a major difference between the two situations.
As for the similarities, Washington says it's unknown how long federal marshals will stay in Vidor, but one thing's for sure, the city has added new pages to American history books. In Vidor, Keith Anderson, KBMT 12 News.
On fire, too. They went upstairs and busted a hole between the two apartments, and that's the way they got upstairs. There were 5 fatalities, 5 confirmed fatalities.
Oh, boy. They couldn't get there in time.
They were gone.
Yeah.
Is this being recorded?
Yeah. But
it was gone.
They were too late.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense. He had too much time to get them babies out of that house.
I can't believe 5 kids were affected.
And he didn't. And then he went into the house. When more people came around, that's when he went back into the house to try to get them. I said, it's a little damn late to go get some babies and your mother out of that house when you know they're already dead. Because he said the 2 babies were up here in the first room, which the little girl was underneath the little boy, which he tried to protect her body because he was over her and he had her in his arms. And the other one was in the bed with his grandma, and for a while they couldn't find the oldest one. And when they did find him, they said they found him in the wall. How he got in that wall, I have no idea.
That whole building was up. The first thing they should have done was cut the gas. See that other girl lived in Alaska, and she's always away. She wasn't lucky she wasn't home.
Witnesses say a drug dealer named Will came here last night to shoot a fella named Head who had robbed him several weeks ago. When Will opened fire, Head was about right here. But unfortunately, so were a couple of 13-year-old girls who had just come from buying some candy. And Head grabbed them to use as a shield against the gunfire. One of the shots hit 13-year-old Aisha Hurd in the head.
She was just laying face down. A lot of blood was coming out of her head. And she was trying to move. She was trying. She was moving her lips, but they kept telling her not to move.
Teenager's family returned home from Grady Hospital, knowing Aisha had been declared brain dead and would soon be taken off life support machines. 13-year-old Jamina Bolston was shot in the buttocks and ran home dripping blood all the way.
I don't think that was right for him to pull a 13-year-old anybody in front of him, because whatever happened between them, that was between them two. She had nothing to do with it. She was an innocent bystander.
This is the man known as Head, 18-year-old Osceola Kelly, who allegedly pulled the young girls in front of him. He was walked out of homicide headquarters facing aggravated assault charges for his role in the deadly shootout. Detectives now say he may even have returned fire during the incident.
You got to support them and let them know that we're there for them.
Betty Maddox Garner was walking Grady homes, talking to the victims' families and others around the project. Having had a son murdered herself, she knows the pain and is trying to reach out with the hope of both healing and preventing.
And this is what I'm out here trying to do now, to let the people know that there's somebody out here that cares, that's been through the same situation, is hurting the same as they are.
In a community where shootings among drug dealers are somewhat commonplace, the killings of innocent bystanders still seem to strike an angry chord.
It seems like every other day somebody be getting shot over here. They be shooting all the time. So can't even sit on your own porch.
Thousands of people converged on Our Lady of Queen of Peace Church in Staten Island Monday. Students, teachers, city leaders, and friends all lined the streets, all expressing sorrow over the loss of Principal Patrick Daly.
It's our last opportunity to pay our respect to a hero that probably spent more time with our families than he did with his own family.
Daly was killed while looking for a member of his extended family, a student who bolted out of Brooklyn's PS-15 into a nearby housing project. The popular principal went looking for the distressed student and was caught in the crossfire of a drug-related shootout. The loss of Daly adds to the tragedy that is a way of life for some students in the Red Hook projects.
He was like a father to us.
How is that? What specifically, how has he helped you?
He was telling me not to do like what the other kids were doing, so just act normal and stuff, and do a copy for the other kids.
He personally took her under his wing, and he made a difference because she lost her father and she lost her mom. So he was really there for her. So this is a major loss in her life.
Even President-elect Clinton took time to acknowledge the loss of the popular principal.
But I just want to say to his family that our prayers and thoughts are with them, and that we are very grateful for him. And I want to remind all of you again that the presidents don't educate children, principals and teachers do.
I'm Mike McEntee reporting.
I'd sort of like to dedicate this appointment to the best.
When you got brothers in your that's working for you, I call them sellouts. That's what I'm gonna call. I'm gonna call them sellouts to the black race, not only the black race, but to all people.
I'm working for all the people.
You can say that, man. You can say we ain't trying to hear that, man. You working for all people?
Yeah.
Why is these projects been in this condition for so many years?
We're here to
The first time we
help.
seen you on television was like sometime this year or last year. Running for president.
Hey, I've been around a lot longer than that.
That's when you want votes and all. You want your. It's a publicity stunt for you. But you know what it is.
But excuse me, you said you help the community, but how do you know about the community? Do you live over here? Do you know the situation how the community is?
The only way you're going to find out about the situation,
are you a resident over in this community?
Come and talk to the people. Is there anything wrong talking with the people?
Well, do you live and you have to be a person that lives?
I want to talk to people. I'm talking to people here.
But you don't live here, so you don't know
Is there anything wrong with coming to talking to the people here?
But
is that wrong?
It's different if you live here and you be here and you know what's going on. That makes a great difference. Because talking can't help nothing. That's like a cover. A shell you can see on the outside, but you can't see inside, so you don't know what the shell is all about.
I'm not here to argue.
We're not arguing.
I'm here to listen.
Well, go back to the bush. Well, go back to the bush.
The only thing to do is keep signing.
They didn't say we were going to
Well, go back to the bush. Well, go back to the bush. Yeah, I want
Kids are waiting over there.
Okay.
Go and go to daycare.
Across the street, follow me.
Housing and Urban Development Secretary Jack Kemp has had his hands full since taking over the federal agency 2 years ago. He's made a lot of speeches and toured a lot of housing projects, often taking President Bush along with him, trying to clean up contract award scandals, improve program management, and rid public housing of drugs. Lately, the focus has been on how government regulations are getting in the way of providing affordable housing. A 22-member advisory commission has concluded a year-long investigation and hands over its report to the president today. It outlines the problems presented by a bureaucratic application process, subdivision ordinances, and zoning, environmental protection, and rent control regulations. The report includes about 30 recommendations on what to do about it. In other news today, the Senate takes up a comprehensive crime bill. The body has already passed a controversial amendment encompassing the so-called Brady Bill, allowing a 5-day waiting period for law enforcement officials to do a background check on prospective handgun purchasers. It represents a compromise between a House-approved bill providing a 7-day waiting period and an NRA-backed proposal providing an instant computer check.
This is an historic achievement in the United States Senate, the enactment of fair, comprehensive, meaningful, effective legislation to prevent handguns from reaching the hands of criminals.
It's been a difficult process in many ways, but I think the final result, with over 2/3 of the senators voting for it, is an indication of our concern about the safety of Americans.
The House and Senate versions must still be reconciled and win the approval of a president who said he'll only sign a gun control measure if it's part of a larger crime bill expanding the death penalty. Mary Miller, Washington.
And these rats are terrible. They need to do something about the rats. It's unbelievable. They are And these rats are terrible. They need to do something about the rats. It's unbelievable. They are disgusted, and this is a health hazardous. You know, we have a lot of little kids living around here. They need to get rid of the rats.
Residents of the Stanford Public Housing Project say they're being overrun by rats.
I seen one about this big, I'm not lying, about like this big.
They say the rats are coming from here, these underground tunnels located just feet from Route 1 and just yards from the Lawn Avenue apartments, and children like 4-year-old Amanda.
I mean, I'm concerned about having my door open and maybe something might go up in my house, or, you know, having my child go outside for a few minutes to play, and, you know, if I take my eyes off for a few minutes, I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah, they be running our porch in the bushes. We can't even walk around here. Can't even eat.
Yeah, I parked my car. So many rats around, you know, around the car. I can't even, you know, get out the car. I have to sleep in the car.
Folks living here tell me the rat tunnels aren't the only problem. They say the rats also live here in this stone wall right behind me. Now, while we were here, we did not see any rats, but we did see this, a dead rat. And folks say part of the problem is there are dead rats all over the place.
They're bigger than city rats. I tell you that.
No, seriously, they are. They are so nasty.
One reason for the dead rats may be an effort by the Stanford Housing Authority to get rid of the rodents by placing poison in the tunnels and under porches. But these folks say more has to be done before the rats attack.
The rats could give you rabies. If they bite, supposing they bite.
are you hoping to accomplish?
Well, a lot of things. First and foremost, to try to draw attention to the problems here. We have a really severe situation, just at a time when our city really is trying to leave the kind of quicksand of urban decay and making it to the higher ground of city success. We still have pockets like this that are just really awful places to live, where people are really suffering under a tremendous amount of oppression. So first and foremost, we want to just try to draw attention to a problem and try to get more resources to come into this area. And as you can see today, it's really happening. We're having people from not only all over the state and our county, city, and state, but actually people from out of state have been coming forward to try to offer hands, to sleep out in the tent, to bring resources into the community. So that's something that's really wonderful. But the most important thing, we can't have this just be a one-week initiative. It really has to be something that helps stabilize the community, and then it has a continuous after effect that really helps that community to stay strong. And that's why one of the most important things we're going to be doing this week is just a lot of community organizing, talking to tenants. We're going to be knocking on every door in this building 2 or 3 times, not only getting people registered to vote and getting them other resources, but really talking to them about how to take an active initiative in their community for the sake of their community and their children growing up here.
That was a point, excuse me, that a lot of people brought up. They were concerned about what happens after you leave.
Right. Well, look, while we're here for the week, we're going to bring in things like getting kids enrolled in kids care so they have health insurance. We're going to have a job fair here and really want to have anybody that's looking to employ people to come out during that job fair this week. We're going to be having a lot of things that hopefully can help give people the resources they need to be successful. But then the most important thing is residents have to take back their community and have to get involved. And what has happened is the spirit of this community has been so stifled over the years that people really do live in fear. And this is a place like many other places even in suburban communities, where good people have just had a lot of bad things heaped upon them. And drug dealers who don't live here coming and setting up shop here, people coming right off the highway over there on 280 to coming in to buying their drugs in this community. And we need to realize that this is a community that can be strong, can be vibrant, and we need to throw off that yoke of lawlessness and really regain it. And I think that people here can do that. I think that people here are ready for it, but they needed something like this to help jumpstart their energy and their activity.
Last night, Chanel Chandlers was asked to watch her next-door neighbor Evelyn Santos' kids while Evelyn ran to the store.
She came out to go to the bodega, and that was it. Next thing I know, I seen the police, the fire department, and everybody.
Less than 10 minutes later, Evelyn was found dead in the elevator of her Olinville Avenue apartment house. She had been stabbed and shot numerous times. At 5:15 this morning, police drove a few blocks away to notify the next of kin and found Evelyn's 30-year-old sister Denise dead in her gated home on Radcliffe Avenue. A knife was left in her throat. The family bloodbath continues. Police say a third sister, who was apparently worried about her brother who lived just down the street, led them here. And inside his 4th-floor apartment, they found 39-year-old Eduardo Santos and his brother-in-law, both shot and stabbed numerous times, and apparently a 14-year-old nephew who was shot once behind the ear. Neighbors in this normally quiet Parkside housing project were not allowed to go in today while police were investigating. Some didn't even want to go back.
I didn't hear shots. I didn't hear anything. So it's like, you go into the building and later on you're not going to come out. It seems like nobody's going to hear anything.
Officially, police say they have no motive, but detectives on the job say the homes were ransacked. They suspect it was a drug-related slaying, that one or more family members may have owed money. Today, Police Commissioner Safer offered a reward for any information.
Would ask the public for any assistance that they could provide us, and the mayor has authorized a $10,000 reward.
Eduardo Santos' Mercedes truck remains parked outside his apartment. The elaborate fence he helped build around his sister's home obviously could not keep their killer or killers out.
Where would you expect someone making more than $75,000 a year to live?
We can live anywhere. We need to invest properly, but sometimes it's about doing the right thing.
For Salisbury's police chief, the right thing is an address in low-income public housing.
I want to make sure that not only the community, but really my department understands that I practice what I preach. We are extremely committed to this community and making things better.
The gospel Chief Herring preaches is community policing. He says that involves changing attitudes as well as making arrests.
Better. You have to change the way you perceive and think. That's the community as well as the officer.
When Chief Herring first moved to Salisbury, he lived in a comfortable 2-story home in a large tree-lined neighborhood. But thanks to a special partnership with the Salisbury Housing Authority, now the chief, his wife, and their 2 young daughters live in a relatively small apartment in an area where there are a high number of police calls.
Well, we've been received very well. There have been some incidents. The other day we had a drive-by shooting. There about 1 o'clock at night I had to come out, or in the morning I had to come out for an argument in the middle of the streets, and we had a little bit domestic call there and all, but I'm a police officer. You know, I'm about making the community safer.
People agree it's quite a step.
Gosh, I think that, I really think that that's good on his part to put his family in that situation.
This is the Flatwoods community of Lee County, Virginia. There's a school, a few businesses and churches, and a couple of hundred homes, none of which have a reliable source of drinking water.
Well, they're really in desperate need of water. Plus we have the school there, the primary school, that has their own water system that actually have to provide their own treatment. So certainly the school system doesn't need to be in the water business. And
most folks here in the Flatwoods community do have wells, and they use that water to bathe and to wash clothes. But when it comes to drinking, they often have to find water from yet another source.
I've got a well, but it's sub water, and I get people to haul me some drinking water.
But the days of hauling water will soon be over for Bonham and 235 other residents, as Congressman Rick Boucher says more than $5.3 million in federal money is heading to Lee County for a new water system. It'll hook the Flatwoods community into the existing water system in Jonesville. Boucher says one day he'd like all of his constituents to have clean water.
And this is a goal that is in pursuit of our larger objective of serving all of the homes in Southwest Virginia. We hope that the day will arrive very soon when every household in the 9th District of Virginia has clean drinking water.
Boucher says without public water, many industries won't locate it in a community, and that's why this announcement is so important to Lee County. And it's also important to people like Jane Bonham.
Through here.
Well, we need it. It's not only me, it's all the people out through here.
The county still needs to come up with several $100,000 to complete the project. With funding in place, water should be flowing in Flatwoods in a couple of years. In Lee County, Virginia, Karen Cole, News Center 5.
As mandated by Congress, HUD is required to pay a substantial percentage of the operating costs of public housing in the country. Here in St. Paul, federal dollars are needed for almost half of the money to maintain more than 4,000 housing units for low-income families and the elderly.
But the problem, according to the housing agencies that have filed suit, is that HUD is intentionally refusing to make payments, hiding its intent behind layers of red tape. St. Paul Public Housing Agency Director Marshall Anderson.
I think the administration and HUD are deliberately trying to make as many cuts in the public housing program as they possibly can in order to balance the budget or reduce the budget, and as a result it's having a severe impact on our residents and our ability to operate a good public housing program in St. Paul.
And here in St. Paul, the delay of federal subsidy payments has forced the agency to eliminate 31 jobs and defray dozens of maintenance and repair projects. Anderson says if the problem continues, it will result in serious deterioration of buildings. So far, HUD has declined to comment on the allegations in the lawsuit.
On another related front, public housing residents from several states are planning a national demonstration in Washington tomorrow to protest Reagan administration proposals for public housing subsidies. Residents from the Twin Cities will not be going to Washington. Instead, they'll be voicing their complaints outside the local HUD office in Minneapolis. Dave Andrews, Channel 5 Eyewitness News in St. Paul.
McDonough Homes on the east side, one of 3 housing projects that Chicanos say need bilingual social workers to help Spanish-speaking families. But St. Paul's Public Housing Agency wants more time to present the issue to its board. And Chairman Marianne Suddeth says the Chicanos have not done that.
It seems to me that because we have a new board and because we have people who have not had some experience in this area, that it's important for all the people on the board to get a sense of what the real concerns of the residents are. I think if we're going to be good landlords, we have to really understand the problems that our tenants are having.
McDonough residents think they've done enough explaining.
We presented the problems to them on August 10th, 1975. It's 2 years later, and we're still presenting to them the problems. We have met with their staff 18 times. We have met with the Board of Commissioners twice. And the community is saying, how many more presentations do you want? There's a lot of frustration.
Frustrations come, they charge, from broken appliances that are reported and not fixed, floor tiling that isn't replaced, gas and electric bills that climb to $150 a month because of poor insulation and windows that aren't repaired, and neighborhood arguments that are not resolved. They think Spanish-speaking staff in administrative offices of each project would ease the tensions. And if they don't get that staff, they'll ask that federal housing funds to Minnesota be halted while their complaints are investigated. Eastside Chicanos will meet here at McDonough on Monday night. That's when they'll decide whether to take legal action now or to set up another meeting to talk about their problems with the St. Paul Public Housing Agency. I'm Kathy Dalglish, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
You don't have to get AIDS, but people do. A disproportionate number of them black or Hispanic. 20% of the population, these two minority groups account for 40% of the AIDS cases.
When AIDS first became known to us, mistakenly people identified it as a white gay male disease.
Health professionals know that's wrong. They're here to find ways to make sure you know that too, through education, legislation, and environmental outreach. 80% of those who get AIDS from drug use are black or Hispanic. Someone must tell them the dangers. There are legal remedies for discrimination, but not enough protections for people with AIDS, minority or not. Support systems for white homosexuals are established, if not always adequate. But there must be more outreach to the disadvantaged.
AIDS is not a problem of racial or ethnic origin. It's a problem of behavior. It's the risk behavior.
And so the issues of AIDS are not at issue here. Rather, this meeting shows the institutionalization of the disease. It is here, and it is being dealt with. Mike McKee in Washington.
The problem is that this year the federal government decided that people living in public housing would not be eligible for the Energy Assistance Program. Well, local administrators knew that from the start and tried to work around it, but they haven't quite come up with the right solution yet. In the meantime, many of the people who need the assistance most are left waiting. Martha Curtis is one of those people. She went to apply December 1st and was told her bills would be taken care of just like they were last year. But today she was told she isn't eligible after all, and now she owes NSP money she doesn't have.
It would have been paid if somebody would have told me about this earlier. Because like I said, from the beginning, it wasn't the money. I went down there because in my situation, they said, we can help you. And then anybody in my situation, they would go, oh, fine, get help. But now it is the money. The problem is the money now.
Curtis says there are many other residents of her housing project who are in the same predicament. Peggy Moody, coordinator of the Ramsey County Fuel Assistance Program, is sympathetic.
Public housing residents are especially vulnerable inasmuch as a shutoff from NSP, which they are not protected from this winter by a moratorium, results in a 24-hour eviction notice. I think that is very vulnerable. I think if your utility allowance is $57 a month and your bill is $157, you are very vulnerable.
But the state coordinator of the program says public housing residents are not eligible this year and really shouldn't be, since they already receive a subsidy for utilities. Moody still thinks something should be done and is meeting with representatives of Mayor Latimer's office tomorrow to see if something can be worked out. Jillian Rice, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
The morning rumble in South Philadelphia was the sound of change followed by the sight of a new beginning.
Today we're going to blow up the old and create the new.
In 19 seconds, 750 pounds of TNT turned 4 of 6 high-rise towers of the MLK housing project into dust.
Feels real good.
To them it feels good, but not to me it don't feel good.
Why does it feel good to you?
Well, this is my home. This is where I was at all the time.
Long before the first of 3,100 charges brought the buildings down, these high-rises were known as Saigon, a symbol of urban blight and decay.
30-something years ago, 40 years ago, people thought that that was a beginning. Well, it was a wrong beginning.
MLK will make way for 80 new townhomes and a 12-story apartment building, scheduled for completion in the fall of 2002.
No, I've seen those.
At the National Conference of Housing and Redevelopment Officials at the Pennsylvania Convention Center, experts say this style of new housing is the wave of the future.
The community that's going to be developed to replace that is going to be a community of not just public housing residents. You're going to have some market rate residents next door to some public housing residents.
Back at the demolition site, spectators have saved this moment in history and are savoring the possibilities.
They're fixing up the whole area, you know, all Broad Street and everything. Should be very nice down here when it's all done.
You will have a new beginning. There'll be hope for your children.
There is also a good deal of cautious optimism that 40 years from now, these good intentions won't be blown into the history. In South Philadelphia, Jesse Garrett, Fox News.
The Hayes Public Housing projects stand as 12-story monuments of urban decay, brick symbols of the failed American dream. This, then, would be a day to remember. The federal government paid to inject these buildings with 2,000 pounds of dynamite, and after standing 40 years, they will crumble in seconds.
3, 2, 1, it's
so happy to see it come down, because life in that building was hell.
But when the dust clears, 3 of the 4 old eyesores still stand.
This is waste, this is garbage, and we have enough garbage in Newark.
I don't know what happened, why one goes down and the other ones don't, and they were all done exactly the same, so I don't have any answers.
Is it unusual? Yeah. Is it part of our business to expect it? Yeah. It's a disappointment. It's like anything else.
The sagging concrete and brick seem to mock the city that wants to tear them down. They learned from the cockroaches that once climbed their walls. They will not be exterminated easily.
Unbelievable. Strong, sound, and well put together.
What is left will have to come down, ball and chain.
It could just be 1 or 2 beams that are holding that thing up. And that's one of the problems, that you just can't, like, go back and try to put more dynamite in, because it could fall at any point.
What's happened here is a symbolic reminder. Newark is a city struggling for rebirth, but there is an ugly past here that just doesn't seem ready to die. In Newark, Beth Diamond, News 12, New Jersey.